Threefold social order and the development of the soul in a 14 to 21 educational setting. One of the Steiner Education principles that resonates with me the most is that the development of the soul is of primary importance. Steiner identified three fundamental soul activities: thinking, feeling, and willing. To ensure that all education is self-education, these activities must be drawn out of the child. They should not be engineered. The development should come from an inner drive within the child. Steiner education can be seen as a system that is designed to allow the child to enhance and improve their soul activities on their own. By placing the right environment, experiences, and knowledge in front of the student at specific times, the child develops their soul activities. The developmental stages of the child correspond to three aspects of the child's soul activities and the development of what anthroposophy calls the fourfold human being. In this presentation, I will focus on the emergence of the astral body, thinking, and its development through encouraging a sense of duty within the child. The astral body, which is the carrier of independent emotional life, desire, and emerging abstract thought, emerges around the age of 14. After puberty, a young person now starts to develop the capacity for individual judgment and becomes a being of thinking. They start to seek truth and meaning. This leads to students entering adolescence to become more idealistic. They want to find a way of viewing society and understanding how they should interact within it. Michael Nagel, one of Australia's leading experts in child development, suggests that the adolescent brain goes through many changes between the ages of 14 and 21. Research shows that teenagers think with their emotions and are influenced by the perceived reactions of their peers. This is the development of what Michael Nagel calls a theory of mind, which has many correlations with what Steiner calls the astral body. Quote, "When we are old enough to consider what might be on someone else's mind, we have arrived at a developmental stage encompassing a theory of mind. The capacity to think about our mental state and the ability to understand and predict another person's mental processes, including their emotions, thoughts, intentions, beliefs, and motives. I believe there is a correlation with what Steiner calls the astral body and Nagel calls a theory of mind. Both point towards a time where students start to look to the outer world to find truth. Steiner refers to this time as, quote, when understanding for the activities of other people awakens, whereas Nagel refers to this as when there forms the, quote, ability to understand and predict another person's mental processes. Both Steiner and Nagel point towards adolescence being an influential time in a child's life as they start to search for the truth and develop their own judgments. It is at this developmental stage that a student is ready to start what Steiner would call moral imagination. Before a student can form their own moral imagination, they will need to understand the two fundamental extremes in how we think society should be organized. One emphasizes complete individual separation and self-focus, or individualism, while the other prioritizes the group above all else, or collectivism. Steiner saw how a sense of duty could emerge at the intersection of these two extremes, where individual freedom and benefit to society meet. This is not duty to only meet one's own needs, as in individualism, but also not the forced duty of collectivism. The intersection of individual freedom and benefit for society is what he termed ethical individuality. It was Steiner's view that moral imagination should culminate in the discovery of ethical individualism, where a student freely discovers their own likes and talents, how their likes and talents can be used in service of society. The dynamic between rugged individualism and collectivism was something that Steiner was acutely aware of during his lifetime. The collectivist ideologies of fascism and communism were on the rise in Europe in the early 20th century, and on the other hand, there was also the emergence of capitalism in the West. Proponents of collectivist ideology and individualism understand that adolescence is a key time to find followers for their ideology. The summary of the moral basis of both can be seen in these quotes. In Gert Biesta's article on education, the school and society in age of instant gratification, he states that he agrees with the statement that the premier demand upon all education is that Auschwitz does not happen again. Matthias Desmet theorizes that atrocities such as Auschwitz and more recent genocides such as the killing fields in Cambodia are caused by totalitarian ideology, which creates a psychological effect on the population he calls mass formation. Mass formation is, in essence, a kind of group hypnosis that destroys individuals' ethical self-awareness and robs them of their ability to think critically. I believe that Steiner education helps to protect individuals from forms of totalitarian mass formation. If a population has developed their soul life, then they will naturally be more inclined towards ethical individualism rather than the collectivism that occurs in a totalitarian regime. At the same time, Steiner education can help instill a love of community and society, which would reduce overly individualistic tendencies. Steiner wrote and thought about the social question in 1919 until his death in 1925. In response to the rugged individualism and collective ideologies, Steiner envisioned the threefold social order, consisting of independent cultural life, rights life, and economic life. He saw that this structure mirrors the threefold nature of the human being's thinking, feeling, and willing, and the nerve sense system, rhythmic system, and limb system. Steiner envisioned that one of the potential problems of the times in 1925 and beyond would come from socialism's push to use the rights life through political means to dominate the threefold social order. This would have the effect of dampening the fraternity that occurs in the free market of buyers and sellers in the economic sphere, but also cause a loss of freedom within the cultural life and education and spiritual life, as education and spiritual life become places of indoctrination, either towards nationalism in the case of fascism or towards class-based identification in communism. Both would hamper the soul development of the individuals in those systems in favour of collectivist ideology. At the same time, Steiner saw that capitalism, unchecked by a strong and independent rights life and spiritual life, would also damage the social order. Under capitalism, the rights life would be for sale to the highest bidder, and companies could use the rights life to create monopolies and unfair competition. The spiritual life would also be dominated by a sense of materialism and individualism, which would create an unsustainable stress on natural and social systems. It is my belief that through teaching the threefold social order, students will be able to begin the impulse of moral imagination. Steiner believed that the individual is morally barren unless he has moral ideas of his own. Perhaps this is what the culmination of Steiner education is aimed to do, to help a child through the cultivation of gratitude, love, and duty come to the conclusion that humanity should be free through setting up of a social system that allows for individual freedom and a sense of duty to the whole. In Steiner's work on the threefold social order, he suggests that, quote, the present crisis in human history demands the development of certain faculties of perception in every single human being. The first rudiments of these must be started by the schools and educational systems. By thinking about how each individual has a right to certain freedoms in the social sphere, it can help adolescent students achieve their own moral imagination. This corresponds with the developing theory of mind, which Michael Nagel's research has found to occur during adolescence. To develop a functioning theory of mind, Nagel suggests that a child must be able to put themselves into another's shoes and imagine their thoughts and feelings when they make decisions. A functioning theory of mind seems like it is essential to be able to begin moral imagination. If cognitive and affective processes are needed for the development of a theory of mind, this corresponds to what Steiner sees as thinking and feeling. When a student is able to put themselves into another's shoes and intuit their thoughts and feelings, they are working on their soul activities. The threefold social order can be a useful model for helping students to understand right behaviour and wrong behaviour, and a set of moral ethics that can be used to help unfold a sense of duty within the student. Perhaps this is what Steiner sees as faculties of perception needed to prevent the crisis of totalitarianism. These faculties of perception that students must begin to develop could culminate in the finding of the most agreed upon moral code, which can be phrased, the initiation of the use of force against another is prohibited, other than in genuine defence of self, other, or property. This framework can be useful for students to model another person's thinking and feeling within the social sphere, and if it is right or wrong behaviour. As a thinking exercise, students could be asked to use the threefold social order to discuss or intuit the following moral statements. In the spiritual cultural sphere, each person has the right to a free spiritual and cultural life. This means that there is freedom of expression and thought in society. The rights life or political sphere, each person has equal rights as a foundation of a fair society. The rights that a person has is independent of their ability in the spiritual cultural sphere or the value they create in the economic process. each stands on his simple human value. In the economic sphere, each person is free and equal to come into voluntary trade with another person. This allows the formation of free associations or businesses that create goods and services that circulate. In Steiner's lecture series on a child's changing consciousness, he suggests that the improvements in the social sphere would not come from the creation of new institutions, but would come from improvements in the kind of people within society. I believe that our current situation, just over 100 years since Steiner's death, has many similarities with the social situation in Steiner's time. It is said that history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme. It is my hope that Steiner's teachings on education and the threefold social order can be of use to us as we navigate these challenges.